The great chamber of the Galactic Council was filled with the most powerful beings in the known universe. Hundreds of delegates sat in their floating seats, arranged in a massive circle around the central platform. Today, they had gathered to hear the final words of a dying king. King of the Empire walked slowly to the center of the platform. His scales, once bright gold, had faded to a dull bronze. His movements were heavy with age and sickness. Everyone knew he had only days left to live. Daniel Carter stood at the back of the chamber, in the section reserved for minor species. Humanity had joined the galactic community only 30 years ago, and they were still considered children among the stars. Daniel was a diplomat, though his role was mostly to watch and learn. No one expected humans to speak at important meetings like this. King raised his hand, and the chamber fell silent. "I come before you today not as a king but as a father," said. His voice was weak but clear. "My empire is strong, my generals are capable, my succession is secure, but I have one matter that remains unresolved: my daughter." A wave of whispers moved through the chamber. Everyone knew about the princess. Everyone knew about her curse. "Princess cannot take my throne," continued. "Her condition prevents her from being near any living creature. She produces a mist from her scales that is lethal to all known species. She has lived her entire life in isolation, watched by cameras, fed by machines. She has never been touched by another living being." Daniel felt his chest tighten. He had read about the princess in briefing documents, but hearing her father describe her life made it real in a terrible way. "I will not live to protect her," the king said. "So I make this offer to the Galactic Council. Whoever agrees to become my daughter's guardian after my death will receive control of the trade routes through the spiral arm. They will also receive ownership of 3 resource-rich planets in our outer territories." The chamber erupted in noise. Those trade routes were worth more than most planetary systems. The offer was incredibly generous. But then High Counselor, the tall leader of the council, stood up from his elevated seat. "Your Majesty," said, his voice cold and sharp, "you are asking someone to die. Your daughter's curse kills anyone who breathes her air for more than a few hours. This is not an inheritance. It is an execution disguised as an honor." Laughter spread through the chamber, cruel, mocking laughter. King lowered his head. "I know what I am asking. I know it seems impossible, but I am begging you, someone, anyone, please do not let my daughter die alone." The laughter continued. Delegates whispered jokes to each other. Some did not even bother to whisper. Daniel watched the old king standing alone on that platform, and something inside him broke. He thought about his own father, who had died when Daniel was young. He thought about what it meant to be truly alone. Before he knew what he was doing, Daniel stepped forward. "I have a question." The laughter stopped. Every eye in the chamber turned to look at the human in the cheap suit standing in the back section. High Counselor made a sound of disgust. "The human section has not been granted speaking rights." "I just have one question," Daniel said. He walked forward, ignoring the stares. "King, what does the princess want?" Silence, complete silence. Stared at Daniel as if he had spoken in a language no one understood. "What?" "Your daughter," Daniel said. "What does she want? Has anyone asked her?" The king's old eyes filled with tears. "No," he whispered. "No one has ever asked her what she wants. No one has ever spoken to her directly except through screens and speakers. She watches the universe through cameras. She has never felt sunlight on her scales. She has never held another hand." Daniel nodded slowly. He took a deep breath. "Then I volunteer. I will be her guardian." The laughter that followed was the loudest yet. Delegates howled with amusement. Some stamped their feet or slapped their tails against their seats. "The human volunteers to die," someone shouted. "How generous of the small creature," another called out. High Counselor raised his hand for silence, though he was clearly amused. "Human, do you understand what you are agreeing to? The princess's mist will kill you within hours. Your species is fragile. You have no resistance to toxins of this nature." "I understand the risks," Daniel said. "Then you are a fool," replied. "But I suppose it is a kindness to let you die quickly. At least the princess will have company for a few hours before we must find another solution." Daniel ignored the insult. He looked directly at King. "I give you my word. I will take care of your daughter. I will not let her be alone." The old king walked forward, his steps unsteady. He reached out and took Daniel's hand. His scales were cold, but his grip was strong. "Human," said, "I do not know why you do this, but I am grateful, more grateful than you can know." The formal documents were brought forward. Daniel signed his name while the council watched with amusement and pity. Ambassador, Daniel's superior, stood nearby with worry in her eyes, but she did not stop him. She had known Daniel for years. She knew that when he made a decision like this, nothing could change his mind. "You are either the bravest human I have ever met," said quietly, "or the most foolish." "Maybe both," Daniel replied. After the ceremony was complete, a guard escorted Daniel through the palace. They walked through long hallways and passed through 7 different containment shields. Warning signs covered every wall. The air grew colder as they went deeper. Finally, they reached a large white room. Everything inside was sterile and empty. There were no decorations, no furniture except a simple bed and a screen on the wall. In the corner of the room, a small figure sat huddled against the wall. Her scales were pale, almost colorless from years without sunlight. She looked up as Daniel entered, and her eyes went wide with fear. "Stay back," Princess said. Her voice was soft and frightened. "Please stay back. You will die if you come closer." Daniel looked at the young princess, alone in her white prison, and he smiled gently. "Hello," he said. "My name is Daniel. I am going to be your new family." And he took another step forward. Daniel wore an environmental suit when he first entered the isolation chamber. The suit was bulky and uncomfortable, but it was standard safety equipment. The doctors had insisted on it. They said he would die in minutes without protection. Princess watched him from her corner with wide, frightened eyes. She had pressed herself against the wall as far as she could go. Her pale scales trembled slightly. "Please," she whispered, "you need to leave. My mist will get inside your suit eventually. It always finds a way." Daniel sat down on the cold floor, keeping a respectful distance from her. "I am not going anywhere," he said. "But I am also not going to rush you. We can just sit here for a while. Is that okay?" Stared at him. She did not seem to understand what was happening. Every other visitor she had ever had came with fear in their eyes and left as quickly as possible. This human was different. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Because you looked lonely," Daniel said simply, "and because no one should have to live like this." They sat in silence for a long time. Daniel did not push her to talk. He just waited patiently. Eventually, trembling stopped. She slowly moved a little closer, though she still kept several feet between them. "What is it like outside?" she asked quietly. "I have only seen it through screens." Daniel smiled. "It is big, bigger than any screen can show. The stars look different when you see them with your own eyes, and planets are not just images. They have smells and sounds and textures. Earth, my home planet, has these massive bodies of water called oceans. They go on forever, and the waves make this sound that never stops." His eyes grew wide with wonder. "That sounds beautiful." "It is," Daniel said. "I would like to show it to you someday." Over the following days, Daniel returned to her chamber again and again. He brought books and pictures. He told her stories about Earth, about his childhood, about his sister who studied ocean creatures. Listened to everything with desperate hunger. She had spent her whole life starving for connection, and Daniel was finally feeding her soul. During his visits, Daniel also studied her condition carefully. He read every medical report. He analyzed the composition of her mist. Something about it seemed familiar to him, though he could not figure out why at first. Then, on the fifth day, he understood. The toxins in its mist were similar to certain chemicals that humans had been exposed to for centuries. Industrial pollution, volcanic gases, certain natural compounds. Humanity had developed resistance to many poisons over their history. The human body was remarkably good at adapting to hostile environments. Daniel contacted a human medical team and shared his findings. They confirmed his theory. Mist was dangerous to humans but not immediately lethal. With gradual exposure, a human body could build tolerance. On the seventh day, Daniel made a decision. He walked into his chamber wearing his environmental suit as usual, greeted him with a small smile. She had grown comfortable with him now. She no longer pressed herself against the wall when he entered. "I want to try something," Daniel said, "but I need you to trust me." Tilted her head. "What do you mean?" Daniel reached up and removed his helmet. The reaction was immediate, screamed and scrambled backward. "No, put it back on, you will die, please." Daniel felt the mist enter his lungs. It burned slightly and his eyes began to water. He coughed a few times, but he stayed standing. He stayed breathing. "I am okay," he said calmly. "Look at me, I am okay." Was crying, tears rolled down her pale scales. "How? Everyone dies. Everyone always dies." "Humans are different," Daniel said. "We are adaptable. We can survive things that other species cannot. Your mist hurts a little, but it will not kill me. I have been studying your condition. I can build resistance over time." He walked toward her slowly, was frozen in place, staring at him with disbelief. "This is not possible," she whispered. "And yet here I am," Daniel said. He knelt down in front of her and held out his hand, palm up. "You have never touched anyone before. Would you like to?" Looked at his hand like it was the most precious thing in the universe. Her own hand trembled as she reached toward him. She stopped several times, afraid that this was a dream, afraid that he would suddenly collapse and die like everyone else. Finally, her cold scales touched his warm skin. Daniel smiled and gently closed his fingers around her hand. "See," he said, "I am still here." Burst into tears. She cried harder than she had ever cried in her life. All the years of loneliness, all the years of believing she was a monster, all the years of never being touched by another living creature. It all came pouring out. Daniel sat with her and held her hand while she cried. He did not let go. That night, King died peacefully in his sleep. The doctors said he had been holding on for days, waiting to know that his daughter was safe. When he received the report that a human had touched his daughter and lived, he finally let himself rest. Daniel officially became guardian the next morning. The Galactic Council sent observers to accompany them, still expecting Daniel to die. They wanted to document the failure of this foolish human experiment. As their ship prepared to leave space, sat next to Daniel in the passenger cabin. She had never been on a ship before. She had never been anywhere before. "Daniel," she said quietly, "why did you really do this? You could have died, you still might die. Why would you risk your life for a stranger?" Daniel looked at her with kind eyes. "Because everyone deserves someone who stays," he said. "And I am going to stay for as long as you need me." Did not cry this time. She just leaned a little closer to him, and for the first time in her life she did not feel alone. Behind them, the Galactic Council's observers recorded everything. They were certain the human would be dead within weeks. They were already preparing their report about human foolishness. They did not understand humans at all. The orbital station above Earth was loud and crowded and completely overwhelming, pressed close to Daniel as they walked through the corridors. Humans were everywhere, rushing past them, talking and laughing and shouting. She had never seen so many living creatures in one place. "Are you okay?" Daniel asked, looking down at her with concern. "There are so many of them," whispered, "and they are not afraid of me." It was true. The humans they passed did not run away or scream. Some of them smiled and waved. A group of children pressed their faces against the transparent barrier of a viewing window and pointed at with excitement. "Look at her scales," one child shouted. "They are so pretty." Did not know how to react. No one had ever called her pretty before. No one had ever looked at her with anything other than fear or pity. Daniel gently guided her through the station until they reached a shuttle bay. They boarded a small transport ship and descended through the clouds toward the surface of Earth. When they landed, Daniel took to his family home on the coast of California. It was a simple house near the ocean, nothing like the cold, sterile rooms she had lived in her whole life. The walls were covered with pictures. The furniture was soft and comfortable. Everything smelled like salt and flowers. Daniel's sister was waiting for them at the door. She was tall and tan with messy brown hair tied back in a ponytail. She looked at with a warm smile. "So you are the famous princess," said. "Daniel told me so much about you. Come in, I made dinner." Hesitated. "I might be dangerous to you. My mist can hurt people." Laughed. "Honey, I study poisonous sea creatures for a living. I have been stung, bitten, and sprayed by things that would make your mist look like perfume. I will be fine." Before could protest, pulled her into a hug. It was quick and casual, the kind of hug that families give each other without thinking. Released her and walked toward the kitchen as if nothing unusual had happened. Stood frozen in the doorway. That was only the second time anyone had ever hugged her. The first few weeks on Earth were like a dream. Daniel and taught how to cook human food. They watched old movies together late at night. They walked on the beach at sunset and felt sand between her toes for the first time. One morning took to see the ocean up close. They stood at the edge of the water, and the waves rolled over their feet. "It never stops," said, watching the endless movement of the sea. "Daniel told me about this, but I did not really understand." "The ocean has been here for billions of years," said. "It has seen everything come and go. Civilizations rise and fall, species appear and disappear, but the waves keep coming. There is something comforting about that, I think." Looked at the horizon where the water met the sky. "I feel very small," she said softly. "Small is not bad," replied. "Small means you are part of something bigger." Meanwhile, the Galactic Council observers continued their work. They followed Daniel everywhere, scanning his vital signs, analyzing his blood samples, waiting for his health to fail. They were certain his body would break down eventually. But instead of getting weaker, Daniel grew stronger. The human doctors explained that his immune system was adapting to mist. His body was learning to process the toxins. He was building resistance just as he had predicted. The observers did not know how to report this. They had expected a tragedy. Instead, they were witnessing something they could not explain. 3 months after arrived on Earth, the first assassin came. He was a noble, sent by the houses that were fighting for control of the empire. They blamed the cursed princess for their king's death. They wanted to end her bloodline forever. The assassin broke into Daniel's home in the middle of the night. He expected to find an easy target, a fragile princess protected only by a dying human. Instead, he found Daniel Carter waiting for him in the living room. "I heard you coming from 3 blocks away," Daniel said calmly. "You are not very quiet for an assassin." They lunged at him with a blade. Daniel moved with the speed and precision of his old military training. In seconds, the assassin was on the ground with his arm twisted behind his back. Daniel looked down at him without anger. "I was a combat medic before I became a diplomat," he said. "I know how to hurt people and I know how to heal them. I prefer healing, but I will do whatever is necessary to protect my family." The assassin struggled. "She is cursed, she is a monster, you cannot protect her forever." "Watch me," Daniel said. He did not kill the assassin. Instead, he made tea and sat the frightened down at the kitchen table. Watched from the hallway, trembling with fear. "I want you to deliver a message to the noble houses," Daniel said to the assassin. Tell them that Princess is under human protection. Tell them that her mist does not harm us. Tell them that if they send more assassins, those assassins will not return at all." The assassin stared at Daniel with disbelief. "You are just one human." Daniel smiled. "I am never just one human. Humanity protects its own, and is ours now." He released the assassin and watched him flee into the night. Within days, the message spread across the galaxy. The cursed princess was protected by creatures immune to her curse. The humans had done the impossible. High Counselor received the news in his chambers. He read the report 3 times, convinced it was some kind of mistake. "Impossible," he muttered. "Humans are weak, humans are fragile, this cannot be true." But it was true, and the Galactic Council had stopped laughing. The Galactic Council chamber was even more crowded than it had been the day Daniel first volunteered. Representatives from every major species filled the floating seats. News crews broadcast the proceedings to billions of viewers across the galaxy. Daniel walked down the central aisle with beside him. She wore a thin environmental veil over her face, more for the comfort of others than for any real protection. Her scales had regained some of their color after months of living in sunlight. She looked stronger now, healthier. But she was terrified. Daniel could feel her trembling. "You do not have to speak if you do not want to," he whispered. "I can handle this." Shook her head. "No, this is my fight too. I am tired of letting others speak for me." High Counselor stood at his elevated platform, looking down at them with cold, compound eyes. Behind him, a group of nobles sat in the special observer section. They had demanded this hearing. They wanted their princess back. "This council is now in session," announced. "We are here to determine the legal status of Princess of the Empire and the validity of her guardianship transfer to the human known as Daniel Carter." One of the nobles, a large male with deep red scales named Lord, stood up immediately. "This matter is simple. The princess belongs to the people. She must return to her rightful place." "Her rightful place was a prison cell," Daniel said calmly. "She was kept in isolation for her entire life. No visitors, no contact, no freedom. You called her cursed and treated her like a disease." Hissed with anger. "We protected others from her. She is dangerous." "She is a person," Daniel replied, "and she deserved better than what your empire gave her." The nobles presented their legal argument. They claimed that King had made the guardianship contract under the assumption that Daniel would die from mist. Since Daniel had survived, they argued, the contract was void due to unforeseen circumstances. It was a clever argument. Daniel could see several council members nodding along. Then stepped forward. "May I speak?" she asked. Her voice was quiet, but it carried through the silent chamber. Seemed surprised. In all the years of council records, no one could remember the cursed princess ever speaking publicly. "You may," he said slowly. Turned to face the nobles from her own species. "I remember all of you," she said. "Lord, you visited my father's palace when I was 7 years old. I watched through the cameras as you told him that I was an embarrassment to the empire. You suggested that it would be merciful to end my life quietly." Scales paled. That was taken out of context. "Lord," continued, pointing to another noble, "you proposed a law that would have made it legal to execute anyone with my condition at birth. You called us genetic mistakes." The chamber was completely silent. Every eye was fixed on the young princess. "For 20 years I lived in a white room with no windows," said. "I watched the universe through screens. I heard voices only through speakers. I felt nothing but cold walls and the mechanical arms that brought my food. I dreamed of someday touching another living creature. I dreamed of someday feeling the sun on my scales." She paused and her voice grew stronger. Then Daniel came. He was the first person to ever ask what I wanted. He was the first person to ever sit with me and talk to me like I mattered. He was the first person to ever touch me. reached up and removed her environmental veil. Gasps filled the chamber. Several delegates in the front rows scrambled backward in panic. "You see how they react," said bitterly. "This is how the galaxy has always seen me, as a monster, as a curse, as something to be feared and avoided and locked away." Daniel stood up from his seat and walked to her side. Without hesitation, he took her hand. His bare skin touched her bare scales in front of the entire galaxy. Nothing happened. He did not collapse. He did not choke. He simply stood there holding her hand, looking at her with gentle eyes. "This human looked at me and saw a person," said. "He risked his life because he believed I deserved better. And he was right. I do deserve better. All of us who have been called cursed deserve better." She turned to face the council directly. "By ancient law, I have the right to choose my own family when my birth family has failed to protect me. My birth family locked me in a cell for 20 years. They me love and connection and basic dignity. They failed me in every possible way." Her voice rang clear and strong. "I choose Daniel Carter as my family. I choose humanity as my people. You have no claim on me anymore." The nobles erupted in protest, shouted that she had no right to reject her own species, but the legal experts in the chamber were already nodding, had cited the correct ancient law. Her argument was valid. Raised his hand for silence. For a long moment, he stared at Daniel and standing together on the chamber floor. The human was still holding the princess's hand, completely unharmed by her mist. "The council rules in favor of the guardianship," announced. His voice was flat and cold. "Princess has exercised her legal right to choose her family. The claims are—" The nobles screamed in outrage, but the ruling was final. Council security escorted them out of the chamber while they shouted threats and curses. As Daniel and walked toward the exit, stepped into their path. "Human," he said quietly, so only they could hear, "you have made powerful enemies today. The noble houses will not forget this insult, and there are many in this council who see humanity as a threat to galactic order." Daniel looked up at the towering. "We have been making enemies since we discovered fire. We are still here. We adapt. We survive. We protect our own." His compound eyes flickered with something that might have been respect or might have been fear. Perhaps, but do not assume that stubbornness is the same as strength. Daniel smiled and squeezed hand. "Where I come from, stubbornness is our greatest strength." They walked out of the council chamber together. Behind them, the galaxy watched and wondered what these strange humans would do next. 5 years had passed since Daniel first took his hand in that white prison cell. The galaxy had changed in ways no one expected. The colony world of New Haven orbited a gentle yellow star in a quiet corner of human space. It was not a large world, but it was beautiful. Rolling hills covered in blue grass stretched toward distant purple mountains. 2 small oceans reflected the golden sunlight. It was a world made for new beginnings. Daniel stood on the porch of his home, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. His hair had turned gray at the temples now, a side effect of years of exposure to mist. Human doctors said he was perfectly healthy, just aging a little faster than normal. He did not mind. Some things were worth the cost. Walked out to join him, carrying 2 cups of tea. Her scales had deepened to a rich purple over the years, a sign of health and happiness in biology. She no longer looked like the frightened creature huddled in the corner of an isolation chamber. She looked like someone who knew exactly who she was. "The delegation from the system arrived this morning," she said, handing him a cup. "They want to join the alliance." Daniel smiled. "That makes 12 species now, not bad for a colony of outcasts." New Haven had become something unexpected. After the trial at the Galactic Council, other beings with unusual conditions began seeking refuge here. A species whose touch caused paralysis. A race whose songs drove other creatures mad. Individuals from a dozen different worlds who had been called cursed or broken or dangerous. They found a home on New Haven. They found humans who were not afraid to adapt. Slowly, a community grew, then an alliance. Now, a small but significant power in galactic politics had become the ambassador for this alliance. She traveled to council meetings and negotiated treaties. The princess, who had never been allowed to leave her room, now spoke for thousands of outcasts across the galaxy. "Father," she said softly, using the title she had chosen for Daniel 3 years ago, "there is something you should know. Our sensors detected a fleet entering the system, warships, at least 30 of them." Daniel's expression did not change. He had been expecting this. The noble houses had never accepted their defeat at the council. They had spent years rebuilding their power, waiting for the right moment to strike. "Lord," he asked. Nodded. "He is leading them personally. He sent a message demanding my surrender. He says I must answer for crimes against the bloodline." Daniel set down his cup and stood up straight. Despite his gray hair and aging body, his eyes were still sharp and his jaw was still set with determination. "What did you tell him?" "I told him to come and take me if he could," said with a slight smile. Daniel laughed. "That is my girl." An hour later, the defense fleet of New Haven assembled in orbit. It was not a large fleet by galactic standards, perhaps 20 ships total, but they were crewed by beings who had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Then the reinforcements began arriving. A battleship dropped out of faster-than-light travel and took position beside the human vessels. Then a fleet of small fighters from a species called the Whisper Folk, whose members could not survive in normal atmospheres. Then heavy cruisers from a federation of outcasts who had been inspired by story. Daniel watched from the command center as more and more ships appeared. Within an hour, the Allied fleet outnumbered forces 2-1. "This is impossible," his voice crackled over the communication channel. "Where did all these ships come from?" Stepped forward and activated the broadcast system. Her voice went out to every ship in the system, every news crew filming the confrontation, every corner of the galaxy where the signal could reach. "Lord," she said, 5 years ago the Galactic Council laughed when a human volunteered to be my guardian. They called him a fool. They said he would die within hours. They thought humanity was weak and insignificant." She paused and looked at the screen showing the Allied fleet surrounding warships. "They were wrong. Humans do not see curses. They see potential. They do not see monsters. They see family waiting to be found. One human changed my life, and through that act of compassion, he changed the galaxy." Daniel stepped up beside her. "This is the choice before you, Lord. You can attack this world and face the combined forces of everyone you ever called broken or unworthy, or you can turn your fleet around and go home. Either way, you will not touch my daughter." There was silence on the communication channel. The fleet hung motionless in space. Then slowly, the warships began to turn. One by one, they activated their faster-than-light drives and vanished into the darkness between stars. His flagship was the last to leave. He did not say another word. New Haven erupted in celebration. The Allied ships exchanged messages of congratulation and relief. On the surface of the planet, people poured into the streets to cheer. But Daniel and slipped away from the noise. They walked back to their little house on the hill and sat together on the porch, watching the stars come out. "The council once called me a curse," said quietly. Daniel looked at her with love in his eyes. "On Earth, we have a different word for something rare and precious that changes everything it touches. We call it a blessing." Leaned her head against his shoulder. Her scales touched his skin without harm, without fear, without any barrier between them. They sat together in comfortable silence as the night deepened around them. Above them, the stars shone bright and clear, the same stars that had watched humanity crawl out of caves and reach for the sky. The same stars that now watched a human and his daughter, proof that the greatest power in the universe was not strength or technology or numbers. It was the simple choice to stay when everyone else ran away. Somewhere out in the galaxy, the Council was watching. They had stopped laughing long ago. Now they just watched and wondered what humanity would do next. They would find out soon enough. Humanity was just getting started.